Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu saying Iran has been lying about its nuclear weapons program for years, presenting detailed evidence recovered from Iran earlier this month. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford serves on the Intelligence Committee, and he joins me now. Pretty remarkable to see that presentation delivered in English from Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem back to us. Your thoughts on what it means about the deal going forward?
Well, it's a reaffirmation again that the key thing that Iran has looked for all along is time and money. They had the know-how. Now that's very, very clear. The two things they didn't have is time and money. The release of the sanctions released in billions and billions of dollars to Iran, and then they've been given 10 years of time to be able to help advance their program. So it is a big concern. When 2025 comes and this whole deal expires and sunsets, it gives Iran a clear lane to be able to move to having nuclear weapons, and that has always been a problem.
Do you have views on the idea that the president talked about, and it's been sort of rumored for a couple of weeks, but he said just in that press conference that he is willing to consider proposing a new deal and scrapping the current one? Has the Senate weighed in on what that new deal must include if it's going to get approval?
We have not weighed in on what that would be. We'd be interested to be able to see what the president proposes. Last week, the French President Macron said, let's keep the existing one. Let's just add an additional one. Obviously, Iran pushed back immediately on that one. That's not an unreasonable approach to be able to keep the sanctions and everything that are in place with this as well. But the big issue has been the open window after 2025. Obviously, it leaves the missile tests out of it, and Iran continues to test missiles over and over again without any real international response. You can't just allow them to test missiles and to continue to advance towards that technology and assume they're not going to use it at some point.
Well, we're going to keep an eye on that. And of course, the other thing I wanted to ask you, though, the president was asked by a reporter from the Hill in the press conference if pulling out of the Iran deal would send a bad message to North Korea. He said, no, I think it sends the right message that we're going to do a better deal and it's going to have to be verified. Your thoughts on that?
I do agree. That actually sends a solid message to North Korea. The whole focus is we won't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon at the end. That should be the same focus with North Korea. North Korea continues to threaten its neighbors. It is in a very unstable position at this point. What the Trump administration has done a very good job of putting real economic sanctions on North Korea, real diplomatic sanctions on North Korea, and it's pushing them to the table. We don't let off the gas at this point. Let's continue to be able to press through and be able to actually get real results, but not to pretend that this is something that's resolved with words. It's not resolved with words. And I think that's the real message to say to Iran, you can't just say you're complying with something, but still testing missiles, just like we're not going to allow North Korea to do the same thing.
Sir, in less than 10 hours, there's a deadline regarding the tariffs that the president had considered for our trading partners on steel and aluminum. But it's not without talking about farmers and that concern about our agricultural products that we want to send overseas, sell overseas. The president just mentioned we'd like to do even more in Nigeria, for example. And then he talked about farmers on Saturday night at his rally. Watch.
For decades, you were dealt one devastating blow after another. Disastrous trade deals, which I'm straightening out, and I'm not saying, hey, there may be a little pain for a little while, but ultimately for my farmers, I love my farmers. They're great patriots. Don't forget, the farmers have been doing lousy for 15 years, okay?
I think, Senator, I'm from Wyoming. You're there in Oklahoma. We all love our farmers. That's true. And I wondered what you were hearing from people back home about their concerns, understanding that they want to give the president some latitude to do what he needs to do when it comes to the economy and our trade deals. But are they concerned that this could really hurt their business?
Sure, it is a big concern to them. When you talk about cutting off trade, whether it be NAFTA with Canada and with Mexico, or whether it be into Asia, or whether it be into Europe, trying to get access, quite frankly, to the European markets, those are all extremely important that we actually get resolved and get resolved as quickly as possible. Everyone understands there are some bad deals in the trade policy in the past. It needs to be corrected. The key thing is it needs to be corrected quickly, because the more Americans are out of the loop in this process, the more other countries just look for other suppliers, and then we're not talking about just turning something back on. We're talking about having to recompete again to be able to re-win contracts. And a lot of our farmers really are on the edge of the knife at this point because they have to be able to plan for what's coming in the future. And if you don't know based on the trade policy, it's very difficult to be able to plan months in advance or a year in advance.
Right, especially when you have all those other factors you can't control, like the weather or things like that. Right. I noted that Oklahoma and China actually has a significant amount of trade in two-way trade goods, $2.75 billion. Oklahoma is the #2 trading partner behind Canada, certainly importing about 26.1% and exporting 4.1%. This relationship with China has certainly changed over the last 25 years. And America has some really good points that it needs to make for China to change the way it does business. But it's not without some concern for consumers, especially, and the business people that are trying to sell into those markets. I'll give you the final word.
No, that is a very big issue. So if China's dumping steel on us, which they are, and they're trying to work it through other countries to then target towards us, that's a big problem for all of our steel manufacturing and for what's happening here. But if we have, for instance, cotton coming out of Oklahoma, heading over to Asia and heading into China, that's also extremely important. Beef is another area that's extremely important. Pork, all these different products that we're actually sending out towards China, whether it be feed like Milo or whether it be cotton and produced goods, it is very important that we keep that two-way trade going. So for our emphasis, the big deal is understanding this really is a global market, and it does help us to keep as many markets open as possible and to get these deals signed.
And that's because when we're given the chance to compete, Americans can certainly compete. All right, Senator James Lankford.
And the world wants to buy American goods.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't? All right, thank you.